This is Bliss Oasis. Change your thinking, change your life.
Stories you have, so bring stories. Of course, now these stories have to be
Bias
stories which are inclined,
to church.
So I wrote story. I went to St. Paul's Theological College, interviewed people there, the principal and others. Wrote a story about St. Paul's. There was a time they were having a graduation, so I covered. And then the story started coming in Target. So it's while I was in Target, I tried to go to nation newspapers.
How long were you at Target?
It's like 6 months or so. And then, of course, I was commuting to Limuru and all that, looking for stories. Sometimes they're not used.
Hi, and welcome again to BLISS OASIS Africa podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Urogi. Andrew Kuria is perhaps one of the most experienced crime and court reporter we have ever had. The soft-spoken gentleman and scribe reported for the Nation Media Group from the corridors of justice for almost 30 years before his retirement from mainstream media in the year 2000. During this time, he covered major cases such as the court-martialing of Hezekiah Ochuka, the guy who led an attempt to overthrow Moi, the Wambui Otieno case against her husband's Umira Kager farm, the murder case of the late and former minister Jackson Angaine's daughter, and many others interesting ones that caused the nation to hold its breath. Today, he speaks to BLISS OASIS Africa about his growing up in various towns in Kenya and his dream to become a writer, which made him resign from a clerical job to follow his passion. Welcome to the podcast. If you are new here, please subscribe to this channel so that you do not miss future episodes. And before we usher in Andrew, let's look at today's message. And today's message is about gratitude. Count your blessings, they say. Appreciation is the highest vibration after love and joy. It always aligns you with source energy and well-being immediately. You always feel great when you cultivate the attitude of gratitude. Gratitude is the most powerful process that will raise your vibration and connect with the source energy and attract what you desire. Counting your blessings not only improves your emotional and physical health, but also bolsters relationships, relieves depression and stress. To illustrate this, some cranky or irritated kids were once asked to mention 3 things they were grateful for, and immediately their restlessness transformed into excitement. Say thank you the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. It is even advised to keep a gratitude journal where you list your daily gratitude. Thank you. And now let's listen to Andrew Kuria and his interview. Karibuni sana. Welcome to BLISS OASIS Africa, where we give opportunities to everyday people to tell us their story. As a young journalist with the Nation Media Group in the late 70s and early and up to mid 80s, I had a mentor as a court reporter. And this mentor eventually became a friend, a good friend. And with him, we covered quite interesting stories. But he always had better ones because he was more experienced. And this mentor became a good friend over the years up to now. And his name is Andrew Kuria, whom we are privileged today to bring to BLISS OASIS so that he can tell us his story about his life up to now, since he was a young child throughout journalism and up to the moment time. So help me in welcoming Andrew Kuria, a former journalist with Nation, who has seen it all, as he will tell us. Karibu, Andrew.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, so how have you been since, I think it's been about a decade since you left Nation?
Oh, I'm quite well, as you can see.
Yes, I can see you're doing quite well, and I keep on seeing you once in a while. traveling all over the world, sometimes in Australia and other parts of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can tell us, our viewers about yourself, because you used to rub shoulder with great lawyers. Like I remember Georgiades, SM Otieno, and the big names of this world. But perhaps maybe you should tell us like where you grew up. I know you grew up maybe in Nakuru or Eldoret, I'm not sure, but give us brief history about your background.
Well, I was born in Limuru.
Okay.
That is close to Nairobi.
Yes.
And then I've lived to many other places, but we didn't live in Limuru for long because my father was a priest.
Yeah.
Who posted in many places.
Yes. And when you say your father, was a priest, maybe our listeners should know that your father eventually became the Archbishop of the Anglican Church.
Yeah, he rose from being a padre.
Yeah.
Then he became the Archbishop of the Anglican Church in Kenya.
This is the late Manasseh Kuria.
For 14 years. That was Bishop Manasseh Kuria.
Okay. So tell us, after you are born in Limuru, did you go to school in Limuru?
I went to school in Limuru. Eventually, that was at St. Paul's. That is where the school is. That is where the St. Paul's University is today.
Yeah.
It used to be called Divinity School. That's where the St. Paul's Theological College was.
Okay.
So that's where I went to school at a school called St. Paul's Primary School.
Okay.
But in all, it's very interesting because I went to 8 different primary schools.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? How come?
You see, your father being a priest,
okay,
is being posted to different parishes. Say he would be in one parish for 6 months, then he's transferred to another priest. So what happened is that was St. Paul's, we went to Muranga, Kahuya. So I went to Kahuya, to Edaga. He came back to St. Paul's to complete his course. Then he was posted in Embu, that is where. So there I went to 3 different schools. In Dhiba, a place called Morubar, and then Gabigiri. So eventually, he was posted in Nakuru. So that's where we actually stayed. But by the way, when he was posted to Nakuru, I was in standard 4.
Wow.
So you can 7 years in different primary school, and then eventually we settled in Nakuru. That's where I did my then KPE, it was Kenya Primary Education, yes.
Okay. Which year would you say this was?
Left Bondeni Primary School, 1964. Yeah. Okay. That's when I left. Then I went to Njoro School.
Mm-hmm. But I also.
By the way, by the time I was going to Njoro School, my father had been posted to Australia for 2 years. He served the church. So he left us at a place called St. John's Bondeni Anglican Church.
Yes.
So that's why I finished my primary school and then went to Njoro. Okay. Njoro did 4 years. We did our exam. Then it was Cambridge University. Was Cambridge University.
Those days.
By the time I was finishing, he had been posted to Eldoret. Now, as an archdeacon of the church, then he became the assistant bishop. Then, so when I finished from 4, I went to Eldoret. From there, I started working. And as I was working, I did my A-level.
This was, can you give us the years, the time period?
This
when you are doing your form
70.
1970. You are doing your form 4 and you are already working.
Now I'm doing my A-level. I'm paying for myself, by the way. It was like what today you call online. You were calling it correspondence schools. Okay. So I did my A-level. That was London University. That is London GC.
All right.
You called it. A-level was doing Swahili, literature, and history.
How come you are paying for yourself? Or rather, how come you had to work?
I felt like because I was working, let me pay for myself. Actually, I paid for myself for A-level. And then at the same time, you not believe it, Patrick, I took a course in journalism.
All right.
As I was working.
So you are working, what were you working as?
I was working with the Raymond Woolen Mills
In
as
Eldoret.
an accounts clerk.
Okay.
Although I was not good in math, by the way. I was never good in.
Yeah,
I was only good in literature and history.
Yes.
And Swahili was very good because, like in A-level, I got an A in Swahili.
That's good.
You see, the thing is, having lived at St. Paul's, you lived with different communities.
Yes.
So main language Swahili. Even the language I used first to go in school was Swahili.
Okay.
So we lived it from different communities in the country.
Okay.
So I paid for my course. I did a diploma in journalism.
Wow, wow. Which college is this? Which
This
school?
is the international correspondence schools.
All right.
It's interesting, Patrick, because what we used to do, today people are online.
Yes.
You do your work, go to the post office,
yes.
Send your work,
yes.
It goes to Britain, in London, it's marked, brought back. If you fail, you repeat.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years.
Yes.
And you see, I looked at it and I said, there was nowhere where they were offering a course in journalism that time, apart from Nyogozi in Tanzania.
In Tanzania.
Yeah, so that's when I got a diploma in journalism, and I came to Nairobi. I resigned from Raymond Woolen Mills.
Yes.
In Nairobi, I decided I'm going to work with a newspaper.
Okay.
So I moved around, and eventually I got to, there was a paper called Target and Lengo. It was a Christian newspaper.
Yes.
And it used to come once a month. The Lengo was the Swahili version, and then there was Target.
I remember those days. I remember those papers.
You remember? It used to be published by a company called the East African Venture Company.
Yes.
But it was under the umbrella of the NCSK, that is the National Council of Kenya.
Okay.
So that's where I worked. That was now 1971.
Before you go there, what as an accounts clerk, what drove you to do journalism? Is it because you are good in literature or you had some interest?
It's because I was good in it, and I always wanted to do, to work with that, something to do with newspapers and all that.
Yes.
Because even in primary school, I used to make some contribution on radio, you see, through the post office.
Okay.
So I became interested in news gathering and things like those. I always, aspired, to become one of the journalists.
So you finished high school, or rather you did your course, you resigned. Yes. Did you just go to Nairobi? I think your father's family was still in Eldoret.
They were still in Eldoret, by the way.
And you went to Nairobi. Whom did you live with, and how did you end up in Target?
I went to Nairobi. My uncles were still living. One of my uncles, the one who follows my father, was still at Limuru.
Yeah.
So I made that my base. So from where is when I went to go and look for a job in Nairobi with Target. Eventually, they decided to take me. I was more of a correspondent. I was not a permanent staff. So eventually, I tried to get to Nation, and eventually I ended up at Nation newspapers in September 1972.
Good. That's about 5 years before I joined. But then, tell us, did you just walk into Target offices and said you want a job, or how did you go about? And
I just walked in. I met a man called Seth Kitange from Tanzania. Introduced myself. He was sub-editor there. And sometimes he used to do subbing for Daily Nation also in the afternoons. So I took him stories to him. Then Odhiambo Okite was the editor. Odhiambo Okite, because Henry Okulu had been the editor before, and then now Okite was there. Okite, who later joined the Ministry of Information.
Okay.
So he told me, bring whatever stories you have. So I bring stories. Of course, now these stories have to be
Biased
stories which are
towards
inclined, yeah.
to church, to the church.
Yeah, so I wrote story. I went to St. Paul's Theological College, interviewed people there, the priest and others, wrote a story about St. Paul's. There was a time they were having a graduation, so I covered. And then the story started coming in Target.
Okay.
So it's while I was in Target, I tried to go to Nation newspapers.
How long were you at Target?
It's like 6 months or so. And then, of course, I was commuting to Limuru and all that, looking for stories. Sometimes they're not used. You know how you've been there.
Yeah, I know. So,
Nation.
yes, you to Nation.
Nation did not employ me straight away, by the way, in September 72. It was not until March 1973 that they agreed to employ me. Luckily, I had given them a story. The story I wrote on Limuru Boys Center. I gave it to Nation, and they used it. So I think they realized there was...
What was the story about, if you remember?
It's about Limuru Boys Center.
What was it about, Limuru? What about?
How Limuru Boys Center is run and who goes there.
There's
a man called Bob Main was the principal of that school. Okay. So I had interviewed him. Told the story. There was also a story about Limuru Girl Center run by YMCA, that is young women. That one I wrote, it was used by Nyota. Nyota Africa was a magazine. Nation was running on the Taifa Leo side.
Okay.
It was a monthly. So after the stories came in, I think they realized I was not that bad. So I was given a letter by Mr. Rodriguez, who was then the managing editor.
Yeah, Joe Rodriguez.
Yes, I was put on probation for 3 months. They added another 3 months. In this other 3 months now, they actually kind of decided to employ me permanently. But then we had to go through courses, that is shorthand courses those days.
Oh, yes.
I don't know whether you...
I remember, I did them. We did shorthand.
I remember you and Nyamora did it.
Nyamora. Funny thing, Pius Nyamora was quite good at shorthand.
Because he had worked with, I think, with Cooperative Bank or something.
Yes, and many people, including you studied shorthand, but I don't think you ever used it.
Actually, I started with Mugambi Karanja and Edwin Omori.
Oh, yes.
The three of us were the ones who were there.
Were you
before Justin Macharia came up a few months later.
Were you going to the same college we were going, Lexicon College?
Oh, yes. I think it was called the Reeswood. Was it Reeswood College or something like that?
Oh.
So we had shorthand. You had to do shorthand. You also had to do typing.
Yes.
120 words. You had to do 120 words.
Yes, I remember.
Yes.
Did you reach the 120 words?
No, I never. I think I reached about 90.
All right, and I think the only person, and I think you, apart from you, it was Edwin Omori, who actually used the keyboard properly with all the fingers, rather than most of the journalists who used to use 2 fingers.
You see, good thing with Edwin, his father had been the editor-in-chief of Nation.
Yes.
From which year now, I can't remember. Because the first editor, I think, was Hilary Mweno. The second, by the way, George Gedi had been with Nation after, because Hilary Mweno was the first editor-in-chief of Nation. That was from 1964 to 65.
Yes.
That is 4 years before Nation. You know, Nation came in 1960.
Yes, it followed Taifa, I think. Taifa was earlier.
Taifa was 1950. It was started in 1950. Just a small. It was then weekly. Then in 1960, 1960, they started Daily Nation, and Hilary Mweno came in as the editor-in-chief.
Yes.
64 to 65. Then George Gedhi came in 1965 and left in 1968. He would later join the nation when I went in 72. But then in between there was Boaz Omori. Now that was Edwin Omori's father, who was there 1968 to 72. Remember when he passed on?
Yeah, during the you're talking about Edwin about his father. Edwin,
no, that was the,
I remember Edwin passed during the American bomb blast.
Oh yes, bomb blast. Edwin died later. Then he died during the bomb blast. But his father had been there from 68 to 72. When he fell sick, he died. So Edwin had been brought up in a home where, you know,
they are typewriters.
Yeah, and then he used to, when he was at Sarehe Boys, he would come to Nation and work. So that's when now we met in 73.
All right. So tell us, tell us, you came to Nation. Joe Rodriguez was the managing editor.
He was the managing editor. No, George Gedhi was then. He now died in 72. He would later leave in. He would later leave in 77. You remember?
Yeah.
That was. So I joined when Gedhi had just come in.
Okay.
In fact, the letter that I was given by a friend introducing me was addressed to George Gedhi.
Who had just come in.
Oh yes. So our managing editor, no, Gedhi was the editor-in-chief.
Yeah.
Mr. Joe Rodriguez
was the managing editor
of the Daily Nation.
Yes.
While Mr. George Mbugus was the managing editor of Taifa Leo.
Taifa Leo, yes.
Yes.
And then we had people like us. Yeah.
And then of course we had the Sunday Nation. Joe Kadhi was there.
Yeah.
We had scholar. Why, you remember?
Yeah, why? Joe Kadhi asked why.
Oh yes.
Then we had people like Asaf Moreria, Joseph Karemi.
No, when I walked in fact, we walked in at Nation House, and the news editor was none other than Henry Gadegira.
Okay.
a very interesting. Gadegira was a very interesting man and very mysterious, by the way. I can remember very well. He used to live at a place where nobody knew.
Yeah.
He would be taken by a car up to a place near, and he would walk the rest of the way. I think none of the drivers ever knew where he lived.
That's Henry Gadegira.
By the way, I did.
You eventually found out?
No, I did.
You did what? You knew where he stayed?
Because I was very close.
Yeah.
You know what happened? I was very close to him. He would send me to places. He was a man who would come sometimes, I think, walking across from Gara to Nation House.
Yeah.
And then I used to get in the office very early. So I would go there, and he would be there at 7. We were supposed to go in at 9. He would be there at 7, and he would come and tell me, Kuria, there's something happening on River Road, Compass Bay Road. There's some uncollected garbage. Go and write a story about it. And I used to wonder, how did this old man know all these things?
Yes.
So he was a very good man. He walked in and he was there. Then they found people like Asaf Moreria, who would later become a deputy. Then you find reporters like Henry Chui. There was
David Derito.
Michael Kabogwa. Derito came later. I think he came same time. There was Philly Karashani from Tanzania. There was Joseph Karimi. There was Micho Dero. There was Kumbu Chokwe. There was Martin Joroge. That is Wamatu Njoroge, who had gone to US. Then he came later, and then he became a news editor later. Then we had Robert Irongo. And then the ones who had preceded us, the young reporters, there was Magina, who had been sponsored to go to the School of Journalism. We had Omondi Waradoli, William Dege.
Phoebe Munene.
There was Phoebe Munene. Phoebe Munene was actually in features.
Yeah.
By the way, you know, in the newsroom, on the news side, there was no lady reporter. They were all in pictures.
They're all in
So
pictures.
then found people like David Kariuki, David Jagi. I don't know, they found him. And others, Modhomi, Jeremiah. There was Njuruni came later, and Kemondo. Njuruni and Kemondo were working with the Sunday Post. So they actually, when they came, they found me there. I think they came in 76, around there. I'm not very sure. They were there. And then you people started coming in.
Like us in the 70s.
Yeah, the Irungu Dirango. There was a Irungu Dirango, Vichurunji here. Kalesta, remember Kalesta's Juma?
I remember Kalesta's Juma, but he came in much later, didn't he?
Oh yes, he came back later. Of course, there was now Kemondo, then there was Otieno Konyango, remember?
Yeah, Pius Nyamora, myself.
Henry Omondi had also worked with Sunday Post. The late. And then, of course, now there were people like Gideon Mulaki who came later. Hughes.
And I think those days where we only had one bureau. Was it one bureau in Mombasa?
There was only one bureau.
Where we had somebody, Francis Raymond. Then people like Gideon Mulaki took over and others.
Now, women were in features, by the way. When I walked in there, I found Barbara Kemenyi. Remember Barbara Kemenyi, the lady who wrote books on Moses?
Yes.
There was Bill Hagichangi had just left.
Yeah.
That's why now Phoebe Munene came in. There was Olinda Fernandez. And then I think Cyprian Fernandez was like a foreign editor, but he was in features. So by then, we did not have even women reporters on our side. I think Eunice Wamba must have been the first one. I'm not very sure. Then, of course, others like Catherine Gichero and others now started. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, even after people like Catherine joined, there weren't so many in news reporting. Yes. And we had Warogoro. Was Warogoro in features or news?
She was a reporter, and then she did some features.
In news also.
Yeah, in news.
Then she traveled to, I think, Australia with her husband. He married one of the reporters. What was his name? You remember his name?
Where am I forgetting his name?
So I think, okay, I joined.
He's actually in West Indies.
Oh yeah, West Indies. I remember I joined in 1977.
Yes.
And Asaf Moreria took my hand and brought me to you and said, "Sure, these guys have ropes."
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting because when I joined Nation, Bob Mudusi was there as a sub-editor on the Taifa side.
Yes.
We had Harry Sambo, and then we had Maurice Sichalwe, the man he used to call Kash from Tanzania. Then that is where now Odiko and Jojo Diko and CB were then in Taifa when I went.
Okay.
So was Njoroge Wakaruri and Frederick Ndungu.
From Keno.
And then Keno, as we called him. Then of course there were people like Omari Chambati. Oh.
Yeah, Omari Chambati. He used to write brilliant stories.
I've never seen a man who could write stories like Omari Chambati.
This is a feature. This is a hadithi, fiction stories.
He would write short stories every Saturday, and which would run for about 6 months. And then he would leave a story. He would write a story on Thursday, submit it for Saturday, because they used to appear on Saturdays. Sit on it. Then next week on Wednesday, start continuing from where he left.
For the next episode.
Yes. Anyway, of course, we had people like Ramat Mani.
And you can describe the interesting people like George Bogus, very humorous person, but always always in a hurry and always impatient.
Always in a hurry, and then telling you, process the story quick, please. Yeah, translate it. And you see, good thing, I think, Patrick, when we joined, we were lucky. We had an advantage. You could write in Swahili.
Yes.
I could write in Swahili.
Yes.
So you do your story for, that was an added advantage.
Yes.
You write your story for Daily Nation, and then you translate it for Taifa Leo.
Yeah.
Then you write features for Taifa Leo, you would get extra money.
Yes.
Or book reviews.
You're right. You're right.
Now, talking of books, I was shocked because Mr. George Gidhi used to check who used to read.
Ah.
Say, we come to your desk and ask Kuria, which book are you reading at the moment? Okay. When we first joined, Mugambi and Edwin, he directed us to go and buy a book called, what now? Pride and Prejudice. You've read it?
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice.
He asked you to buy one copy, or each one a copy?
No, each one a copy. You go and buy, and then you write a book review for him.
Okay.
That is the story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. I don't know whether you read the book, but we did. But luckily, I had done the book, then a brief series in school.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he had about that book. Everybody, reporter who joined around that time, was told by Getty to go get a copy of that book and give him a book review on what the story is all about.
I was lucky I wasn't asked to do that.
Like he would come and say and ask you, what book are you reading at the moment?
I think the steam had gotten out of him by the time I was joining, because I wasn't asked. But after I joined, he didn't stay long. There were a few challenges and he had to leave.
Oh yes, he had a few challenges, about that editorial on the Bokra community.
Yes. So I think now, maybe because you worked eventually after you joined Nation, I think they discovered your talent in court reporting, or your special. It became your specialty.
I tell you what happened. I used to buy these detective magazines.
Yeah.
I don't remember them.
Before.
True detective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I became interested in court cases, and I think somebody somewhere realized, because I went to Parliament for, I think, 2 weeks. I didn't like it. Sitting there covering.
Yes.
Of course, then you see at that time we didn't have specialized reporting.
Yes, you could go anywhere.
Like we didn't have business whatever.
Reporters.
Although Kulbushan was then in business. Remember Kulbushan?
Yeah, he was later joined by Kauli Wamwembe.
Yes, Kauli Wamwembe. And by the way, talking of Kulbushan, he was a sub-editor. When I joined Nation, most of the sub-editors were white men, were not Kenyans. The only Kenyan there was James Ndegwa. James Ndegwa. And then there was the Bediako Asare, the Ghanaian journalist. The other, Bediako Asare, I think you know him. He was another who had written a book called Rebel, the African series.
Okay.
And then apart from that, we had only said Kitange, the Tanzanian, who used to come and sub-edit stories. Because on the side of Taifa, of course, we had Kakabob Mudusi and who was this now? Harry Sambo.
Yes.
Sub-editing. So there was no specialized field like, business. Of course, features was there. Sports was there. But then the other fields, you could be sent to Parliament today. The following day, you could be told to go and do a business story or an education story. Remember?
I remember even when I joined, it was like that.
Yes, so that's when you came in and you found it had already started on in court in 73. Now I was taken there. A reporter called Abuna Denga. I don't know if you found Abuna.
I remember. Denga. No, I didn't find. When I joined, I think he was in the Standard.
Yeah, because Alfred Araujo had done court reporting, by the way.
Yes.
And then I think he went to Foreign or something. Foreign
Sunday Nation.
Before Chege Mbitiro came in. But then Toche was there. And then the sub-editors, this was solely foreign, I don't call them foreigners.
Non-indigenous Kenyans.
It would be there because the other person now who came after that was Philip Ochieng.
Yes.
but then he took over from John McAfee. Remember John McAfee?
Yeah, I remember McAfee. I remember McAfee.
So there was no special I should, but then I think they somehow realized I should go to court. To court, I was taken by Abner Denga, who took him. He took me to the chief magistrate court and the resident, and then he took me to the high court and told me, Kuria, you cannot report in this court, high court, until you have reported for 5 years before a judge.
Yeah.
So we did court reporting. SK Sachdeva was then the chief magistrate. There were others, the resident magistrate like John. No, who was there now? Effie Owor.
Abdullah.
The lady Abdullah came later. Fida Hussein Abdullah came later.
Pritam Singh Brown.
Then Kubaso was chief magistrate, and then he became a judge. They all ended up becoming P.S. Brown, remember? P.N. Tank. Vivi Patel, and others.
Yes.
So I used to be sent to, I covered Makadara, by the way. I covered cases in Makadara. Most of them were those cases. Those cases of Changa, cases of Oloy,
yes.
And then we did Kebera. Then I also covered cases in Machakos, by the way, Patrick. Remember, yes.
Which particular case? Like in Machakos?
Yes, get into a bus, go to Machakos, cover some interesting case, come back. I remember there was a case I covered in Tala Court. There was this I don't know whether you were there when this case came up, Pinkertons. The company called Pinkertons. The guards had been, it was like the 4Gs today. They were transporting money, and then the money got stolen.
I remember Pinkertons story.
Yes, and then I went all the way, because the case came to the High Court in Nairobi before a judge who I think had an interest in it. That is J.R. Macready's son, J.R. Macready, remember? His son, I think, was a manager at Pinkertons.
Okay.
So somehow they decided to take the case to Tala.
Why? Because of publicity.
No, because the publicity also. The way I was very lucky because I was the only reporter who went.
Yes.
It was brought before the Nairobi court, and then the next day they decided to take it to Tala. Somehow I had made friends with Rebello, the prosecutor. Yeah, Rebello. And Joginda Sinsoki was, I think, the one investigating.
Yes.
So somehow, by some luck, they gave me a lift in the morning. We traveled all the way to Tala.
Yes.
I covered the case. The guards were jailed, and I came back with the story. And the other papers,
they didn't have a story.
They didn't have a story. Just like it happened later in 1999.
And I remember
the Shimoli.
Yeah, and I remember those days. If you miss a story, when your competitor newspaper had a story, you would get a firing. Or you get a memo.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, can you mention briefly some of the big cases you really, apart from that one, maybe even political ones?
So, talking of those exclusive cases, I remember the case I covered of Shimoli. I don't know if you remember Shimoli, that crook, the criminal.
I distantly remember, yes. But you can tell us about it.
No, this case was in Kiambu. In Kiambu court one day.
Yeah.
And then we were tipped.
Yes.
There's somebody had written where I think what happened. Yes, it was in Kiambu in 1999. July 31st, 1999. That was my wife's birthday. That was my wife. So they took Shimoli. They would take Shimoli to go tipped. The other papers were not even aware of it. So we went, the man was not brought. Around 11, we decided that is one case that really caused me a lot of fear. Because We waited and the man was not being brought. So we decided, we had a driver. It was Joseph
Kuria.
Thuo.
Oh,
Joseph
Thuo.
And then
Joseph Thuo was the photographer.
Yes. No, that time I went with Thuo, Joseph Thuo.
The photographer.
Not Jenga. James Jenga was the other photographer. Yes. So we went, decided, every was a driver, Kuria, who decided, let's go to Nini to commit prison and see whether, for some reason, we drove through the Kiambu Road. And then on the way, we met with the prison vehicle where the man was, and the police were escorting. So we turned around and followed them. We followed them up to Kiambu. On reaching Kiambu Court, the driver was trying to overtake, and I told Kuria, don't overtake them. Let's just follow them. Then he slowed down. When we reached at the Kiambu Court, he also entered with the car. And then the prison warders came out and told me, so you are the people who are following us. We had been given orders, because he didn't know which car was this following us. We had been given an order that if that car tries to overtake you, you can shoot at it. Because they didn't know who we were. They thought we were the police of there. We were trying to rescue their. Anyway, I covered that case. Yes. And the others didn't get, the other newspapers didn't get it. I think the Kenya News Agency got wind of it the next day, later in the afternoon.
While you are there.
And so the other papers had just a few, I think one or two paragraphs.
From Kenya News Agency.
We had our pictures and others.
Oh.
Yeah, so there were many major cases that we covered, Patrick.
So who was tipping you? For example, the Pinkerton's case, or Pinkerton case, you got a tip and also you got a lift. But
I don't know.
The symbolic case,
the news editor Karimi had, I don't know, he had some contact somewhere in the police. Of course, his uncle was then the director of CID.
And David Derrito also.
And David Derrito also. So the news used to get tips of where the cases were being taken.
Yeah. Now, can you tell us about the Ochuka case, which you covered, the court martial and so on?
Was among the other later cases that came after 1982. They started the court martials after the mutiny.
This is a coup attempt. Yeah.
Yes. So they started these mutiny cases, which were held at the 7th Kenya Rifles Battalion at Langata.
Yeah.
So we started covering those mutiny cases. Then in late 1982, we started covering in September. September after the coup. The coup was in August. So we started covering those mutiny cases where they were being charged with taking part in whatever, they were all being jailed. Then towards the end of the year, November, they started bringing treason cases related to the coup. They brought in Koplo Injeni. Bramwell Injeni was the first one to come in. Then by that time, Ochuka and Oteo had escaped to, the leaders had escaped to Tanzania. So we covered them. Then in 85, they were brought back. We had then covered about 11. So, we covered 14 treason. I covered 14 treason cases. The last ones being Ochuka, Oteo, another character, I've forgotten the name, but they were the last. So we covered them in full.
Can you tell us?
It was more of a marathon hearing, because we were told about 900 hours we have to be in court.
900 hours.
The case would go on to 12:30, we'd adjourn, go back at 2. And in about 2 or 3 days, they used to finish those cases in about 3 days. So all those people were sentenced to death, 14. 2 appealed. 2 appeals were of course, went through. The rest were enhanced.
So during the cases, of course, you met people like Hezekiah Ochuka.
Of course, we met Ochuka.
Did you have a chance to talk to them or have a chance to, you know?
No, just greeting them. You see, the place was really guarded when they were brought in.
Mm.
Now, when we got a chance to talk to them is during the appeal.
Mm.
You know, they were filed, and then the appeal now came to the High Court.
Mm.
Then you know, there it was more free. You know, there was at the barracks.
There is different.
You're not allowed to talk to them.
Yeah,
they're being escorted, and then, of course, now they came for the appeal. Then, of course, now they're having their lawyers there. Talk to them. You could talk to them because, when they was on the dock.
Okay.
Because before they were all dismissed. The appeal, apart from those two.
Apart from who, or the one which were allowed?
Apart from two of them, yes. One of them was a lieutenant. The only lieutenant. The others were non-commissioned officers. The Ochukas and the sergeant Ogidi and others. I can remember. I remember their names. So.
Would you okay, you covered a lot of cases, including the murder of was it the murder case of Ngaine's daughter, I think?
Oh, that was Angaine's daughter.
Angaine's daughter, and I think the late Ngaine was involved somewhere.
Major Kisilu was accused of killing her.
Okay.
The daughter of Angaine.
Oh, okay.
So eventually, the case was, he was not found guilty, by the way.
All right. So there were so many other cases, and I think
there were so many other cases, but I tell you, one of the cases that was a headache was where Kapila, Achuroram Kapila, the lawyer, was accused. Cases related to exchange control money. That case went on and on and on. Firoz Noroji was the defense counsel. He submitted for 2 weeks. When the case ended, he made her submission. We were tired.
Yeah. But who was the judge?
The judge was who? Was it? Oh, goodness.
Anyway, he must have had a hard time also.
It was hard. It was hard. Yeah. Kapila's case. Oh, he was jailed for 18 months, by the way, eventually.
Okay. Any other interesting case you might want to mention?
Yeah. Oh, yes. There was a case of Dr. Wilson Minor. Remember, I think you had joined us then. The one who was charged with stealing X-ray machines.
Oh, yes, I do. I remember that one.
You remember that was 1976, by the way. September 76. Kapila's was in 1977, May. There was then the Nandra case. Remember this man who killed Mrs. Nandra? The chairman of the council, what did they call it for now? The Hindu Council.
Hindu Council.
Yeah, somewhere in Lavington. That was an interesting case. There was the cases of the 2 MPs, remember? The coffee theft.
The coffee, that is Muhuri Muchiri?
Muchiri and Jesse Mwangi Gachago.
Yes. They also went for quite some time.
1978, yes, they went on for quite some time, but they were jailed in February February 3rd, 1978, they were jailed for 5 years.
Now, with all that experience and the cases you've covered, don't you think you should be able to produce maybe a memoir or some stuff, right?
Actually, I have written something.
Yeah.
About I've written a whole manuscript.
Yes.
Of 20 murder cases.
Okay, in Kenya.
From 1960 to 2000. That's starting with the first white man to be sentenced to death.
That's interesting. So,
yeah, and then up to the case of Robert Ouko. I think Ouko was the last case. Julie Ward, last case, is it? Yeah.
So does this manuscript just involve the court hearing or even the investigation part of it?
The court hearing and the investigations. It's a bulky book. It's 400 pages.
Wow.
Over 400 pages. I gave it to publishers. I signed the contract. You don't believe it, Patrick? I signed the contract. The book never came out because the company went. Yes.
But you still have the a copy of the manuscript.
No, I have it. I have it. Then I have the other one is the Mudemba case. The prison trial. Remember the Andrew Mungai Mudemba prison case? That is 1981.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they can make very interesting reading.
And then of course these treason cases, the Ochuka ones and the others. I have it. That one I have. I've written all that. Is also manuscript. I think about 300 pages. All those 14 cases and the appeal and all that.
So what are you planning to do about them?
Then of course I have another manuscript, by the way. One is on the what we're calling the infamous. This is what we call the infamous cases of the Nyayo. Starting from 88, I think 87. No, after the coup, 83. This is the Mwakenyas.
Mwakenya, Koigua Mwere.
That is one is Koigua Mwere. We have our own colleagues who are arrested, like Wahome Mutahi.
Yes.
As Mogo Deuri and others. The late Njuguna Mutonya.
Yeah, I think you have a gold mine there of books.
No, I have 10 manuscript, Patrick.
Yes,
I have.
Yeah, I think we'll get together one of these days and see how we can bring them into fruition. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's quite interesting. Now, can you describe? We are running out of time, but can you describe journalism of the 70s and 80s, the journalism of this moment, this time? Because although you are not actively in journalism, but you can give the difference between then and now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. When we joined, we started off, we were told that the journalism which you're entering into is like a dog on a tether, you know? You can write, but you can write to an extent. When you reach where we don't want you to go, we'll pull you back.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
We were to report without bias, but then there were restrictions. Like you remember those days you could not even enter a court with a camera.
Yes.
Those days, things have changed.
Even a recorder.
Even a recorder.
Yeah.
You could not go with it. So things have changed. We were supposed to inform, educate,
and entertain.
Up to a point. We did our part. We had our own good time, but then there were restrictions.
Yes. Even what was then supposed to be radical columns, like Joe Carthy asked why, it was done very carefully so that it may not hurt some people.
Yes, that thing landed him into problems. Remember during the Norfolk bomb blast on the eve of 1981.
Yes.
Near Eve. Joe Carthy wrote something about it. It landed him a lot of trouble. Okay. They were not to be careful the words you use. You remember the story where Mulaki, Pius, and others were arrested.
I remember, and Mad Mapolomoko.
I don't know if you remember that case.
Yeah, Mad was arrested for drawing Moi.
No, that one I was a witness. By the way, I was a witness in and I messed up. I was declared as a hostile witness.
What was the case about?
You see what happened to Mado?
Yeah.
You know, this office pranks and jokes.
Yes.
He wrote on a piece of a small box, he wrote at a time bomb. Set to explode on touch. He went to the gents' toilet and put it there. So I come in from court, I didn't know the afternoon around 3. I come in and I go back and I see it. I touch it and then I leave. And then I go and tell the news editor, deputy news editor, Mr. Wangalo, Philip Wamalo. There's somebody who is playing a practical joke on us in the toilet about a bomb. And then I don't know how Mr. Wangalo took it. He took the matter very serious. He called the police, you know. Next minute, we were going to Central Police Station. Mad was being put in. I was writing a statement of how I found it. So then I was called as a witness. Now, when I went as a witness, I was asked by my magistrate. "Oh, what do you think?" I said, "No, this was just a practical office joke. I took it as a joke, but I think we took it." He said, "Hey, it was a joke." Yeah. So now the prosecutor said that no. Now I was winning their case, so I was now being declared as a hostile witness.
So you are put down the dock.
Oh yes.
Oh, that I used to stand there.
Yeah.
But I remember Mado was the first cartoonist to draw Moi, and he got trouble into it. Because of
that. Yes. Oh yes, it was terrible. But the worst case, remember, is when this story came about the doctor a statement, and then the chief sub-editor, Philip Ochieng, inserted the word anonymous in the story.
Anonymous statement.
So the government took it as they said, "Oh no, they are also calling the president anonymous because the story, the statement was from president." So later that day, Joe Kadhi, he was then the managing editor, and Joe Nesibi, acting news editor.
Yeah. Joe
Rodriguez, Philip Ochieng, and then who else? Gideon Mulaki, and Pius Nyamora were arrested. Remember?
Yeah. Those were the days.
It was bad because Rodriguez came out and the others one. Mr. Rodriguez came out after 20 hours later. The others were charged.
So obviously things have changed since then, particularly.
So things have changed now. People are free to report.
Yeah, the way we write, but then also technology. Technology has made it very simple. I remember when,
You remember you used to go there as a reporter.
Yeah.
Okay. You used to go alone as a reporter. You report a story. You come and do it for daily, translate for. You go with one photographer.
Yeah.
When you are covering East Africa Safari, you covered Safari, by the way. Yes. You would go with your Pentax camera. I still have my Pentax camera, by the way. You would go with the pictures. Yeah. Come and write it. Yeah. I was surprised these days they have sent a reporter for Daily Nation, one for Taifa Leo, and then one for NTV with a camera. So about 5 people covering one event which used to be covered by one reporter.
Those days. But then again, you remember those days if you were in the field. After writing your story, you go to a telephone booth.
Yes.
Read your story to somebody in Nairobi to take it down. But these days it's totally different. You can actually email your story.
It's totally different. Correspondence went through a very rough time. They would send their stories from out of Nairobi.
Yeah.
And then you would monitor what they're sending.
Yeah, by phone.
I remember Mohammed Ado. You know Mohammed Ado. He works now with Al Jazeera. I think he's the boss. I had a very rough time. He was in Garissa. He would send stories. And he would tell me, Kuria, please sit down and edit, do it something good about it. Because when the story comes, they only use one paragraph. So,
and he's being paid per word.
Yeah, and people like Bashkash also had a very rough time, I think. But you remember Bashkash?
Yeah. And then there are people like Wawero, the photographer, who I think is still taking pictures.
And Wawero, and the others, it was very rough for correspondence.
Yeah. So we are almost coming to the end of the interview. But I would like you to tell us what you're doing currently. And you told me the other day that you actually walk from Eastlands to town every day. How come?
Well, about walking, I always walked, Patrick.
Yes.
You remember when I told you when I was working with Target, I used to walk very far to get a story. So I became used to walking. You see, when you're walking, you think a lot, you see a lot of things which, when you're in a car, you don't see. There's so many things you don't see. Like if I walk here from Buruburu to Westlands, for instance, I do that.
Do you do that every day? Every time you go to town?
Once in a while, with the COVID now, I've not been walking a lot.
Yeah.
But I always did that. There was the time we were doing a book. Remember, there was a book we did about Wayaki Wahinga.
I remember 2 years ago.
In Kikuyu, remember there was that time you found me there.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
been commissioned to write a book for them. To people and gather information. I would wake up 7 and walk all the way to Westlands and then meet with the man who was sponsoring the book. You know him. And he would not know that I have walked all the way. You walk and all that.
Yeah. So that's healthy also, apart from mentally, because you think a lot, as you say, you see a lot of things. It's so healthy because you become physically fit.
Yeah,
I like people who from the house to the stage, they take a border.
I'm surprised, Patrick. Remember, Patrick, we used to walk from Nation House, Nation House, from Boyer Street, to go to courts.
High Court, yes.
These days, I'm surprised to hear that people take a driver to go to court, you know? I mean, Patrick, seriously, I mean, you walk from Kemati Street, you get a company.
There are people who from the house, they take a border to the stage.
Yes.
And then from the stage, they take the vehicle to town. From town, wanaingia kwa lift, mpaka wherever, which they are from.
Oh, yeah. That one I know. It's true.
So they walk throughout the day.
And then that man came and parked his car at the parking. So the only exercise he does is to get into the lift. Go upstairs. When he would come down, maybe go for lunchtime, just close by.
Ama analetewa chips.
Ama analetewa lunch. Then in the evening, so Patrick, we don't have time to go through the gym. So that is our gym. Them they have the gym and pay, you know.
So finally, maybe give us a last word to generally our listeners, maybe even people who would like to go into journalism, although our times are now different.
I can only give an advice that when you go to gather your information, we are supposed to inform, educate, and entertain, as you have said. So you get your information, get the correct information, present the news in the most honest way and balanced way. You know, those days you are told about, write a story, don't make a value judgment, because that's what I'm finding these days. Somebody writes a story, so-and-so said, politician so-and-so said, this is what he meant. Just write what he said. Wait for other comments. Then, if you're investigating a story, check the facts. If you're not sure of the facts, Patrick, you are told to leave it until you're sure of the facts that you have. Somebody goes to a scene of accident, and then he hears people talking. They said, oh, this driver was one who was driving rough and he caused. No. And if you're quoting, quote a witness has said. See, this is what he's alleging, or this is his claiming. But you see, making a value of judgment, that's what is, I think, is spoiling our profession.
It's true.
Get the correct information, disseminate that information, give the right information. If you're not sure of it, leave it, do it another day.
Okay. So thank you very much, Andrew. And I think our viewers have really known about those days, about the people who mattered, the people you met, the profession itself to a point. And also, thank you for the advice that you have given to budding writers or those who are already in the field. And it was a pleasure speaking to you from BLISS OASIS. And the fact that, BLISS OASIS is proud of the fact that the founder of BLISS OASIS, that is myself, have long association with you. And I think we are going to go a long way. So thank you very much.
With you.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for the interview, for conducting the interview. At least we let people know what we have gone through, what is there, what is there to do.
Good. So thank you very much. And until next time, maybe, sorry, you have something else to say finally?
No, okay.
You're okay. So thank you very much. And I hope.
Thank you to BLISS.
Thank you very much. And I hope soon either in the streets, but we are meeting to talk about those manuscripts and see what we are going to do about them.
Yes,
Because,
actually, next time if you call, I could show you even the tools of our trade. The camera. I still have a typewriter here.
Oh, typewriter.
Yeah, it here, a small one.
Okay.
It was then our tool of the trade.
Yeah, those days.
And I keep on telling my granddaughter that this used to be our, what do you call it? This used to be our laptops.
Yes, those days. And you really kept it up. It's like you're going to start a small museum over there.
Yeah. I can use it with the ribbon and others.
Because you have your camera, you have the typewriter. You might as well
have a pen.
Yeah, you might as well
have a pen and notebook.
Yes. You might start a small museum there.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Tutakutana tena tuendelee na hizi story. Asante sana. Kwaheri.
Oh yes. See you next time.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us until the end. BLISS OASIS Africa offers the following services: counseling and life coaching, mentorship in creative writing, publishing and consultancy, website development and digital marketing. Please visit us at our website www.blissoasis.co.ke for more information. You can also call or send us a WhatsApp message on 0722 563 544. Thank you.